Eric Bieniemy leaving the Chiefs.
Yes.
We said this last week, but he's now offensive coordinator for a defensive head coach with Washington and assistant head coach. I think it's disgraceful that he had to make a lateral move like this to prove himself, but he felt that it was necessary. And, you know, everybody who's, I've said this before, who's just, breathed the same air as Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan gets a coaching gig. It doesn't matter that they haven't been calling plays because that was the big knock on Bieniemy. And under Andy Reid, they're also, those two guys are offensive genius head coaches. Bieniemy has to, and like it doesn't. Mike McDaniel goes to Miami.
Zach Taylor, Brandon Staley,
Kevin O'Connell wasn't calling plays as offensive coordinator in Los Angeles. Goes to Minnesota. So that doesn't apply to the young white guy that everybody wants now that Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan have had such success. He doesn't look like those same guys who could also maybe be body doubles in The Wolf of Wall Street. He's black. And that is 100% why head coaches don't take him seriously. There are black head coaches, that is true. But notice that oftentimes black head coaches are from the defensive side of the ball, where there is a stereotype about the defensive side of the ball. It's guys that are physical freaks that run around without any regard to their body, and that you don't need to be a genius on the defensive side of the ball. The offense is where it's at, and that's where the real brains of the operation are. And that is the implicit racism against Eric Bieniemy. He's a tough SOB. I understand that's part of it, but so is Brian Daboll. Like, Brian Daboll is a very similar, I think, kind of coaching personality to Eric Bieniemy. And he was hyped up for a long period of time, rightfully so. I mean, coach of the year, as the next one of the next big head coaches in the NFL. Bieniemy has been getting that hype, but the owners are standing pat. And that's just racism. Also, I think it is like the fact that Bieniemy's kind of been the avatar for the systemic racism issues in the NFL, but it's undeniable his credentials at this point. Undeniable. 2 Super Bowl championships. Always in the AFC Championship, no matter what. A great relationship with the greatest quarterback in the league right now and the greatest player. A great relationship with one of the greatest coaches of all time, now 2-time Super Bowl champion, Andy Reid. They vouch for him. They speak so highly of him. I mean, go down the list. He's earned his right. And again, we said this, that Super Bowl was all a function of one, Patrick Mahomes being Superman and changing the contours of that game. But those 2 touchdowns to Kadarius Toney and to Sky Moore was an offensive coach and staff together reading the defense and seeing that they could fool them with a specific motion twice. That is like high level offensive play calling. And people are going to say, well, that was Andy Reid. How do you know that? How do you know that? And how was all of the good decisions made by the Rams or by the 49ers just a function of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay? You wouldn't say that. Why else would those guys get hired, right? It's a collaborative effort. But for some reason with the Chiefs, Eric Bieniemy doesn't get that credit. And so he has to go to a situation where they are saying they're going to stick with Sam Howell this year. Doubt it. They're going to try to get a new quarterback in there. He'll have a little more responsibility as assistant head coach, but I don't necessarily think the situation is better because it's Washington. And I hope that this gamble works out for him. It seems like it's the only thing he knew, or the only move he thought he could make. But it's very, very, very unfair to him that he's in this situation.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm not entirely sure whether any, because I feel like I'm remembering, and I don't know what the specifics are entirely. Beyond just remembering at some point that there were some rumblings that like Mahomes and him had some disagreements about scheme or something like that, or about like offensive philosophy, but it was never anything to be anything that either A, ever came through in any sort of press conference with either guy, or with Andy Reid, or with any of the other players.
Yeah.
Two, never manifested itself on the sidelines to much of my knowledge. Which, you know, the reason I even bring that up, because I know that that's very anecdotal, is because we saw when there was certain rancor on the sidelines this year when it came to, for example, Tom Brady every week, or Mac Jones with the Patriots offensive staff,
Yeah, right.
and with Kyler Murray basically trying his best not to strangle Cliff Kingsbury with his own clipboard during most of the Cardinals games.
I think you're also like blowing that up. Like, I think that was just a passing report.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is, like, if there was absolutely no smoke to that fire, then like I don't even think there's anything to even remotely hold on to that, like, in terms of personality or in terms of like potential discord. Bieniemy had a huge hand in that, and like you said, even if it is Andy Reid playing calls, we've talked about, and you just mentioned again, like, there's precedent for that.
Yeah.
You don't, like, being a head coach, like, you're like, it is clearly not on every ownership team's rubric to be like, you had to have called plays in your most recent tenure. Like we were saying, Zach Taylor was a QB's coach. He was not calling plays when he was Sean McVay's quarterback's coach, and he's now the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals and has been to the conference finals and the Super Bowl twice in the last 2 years.
Yes.
So like, it's not a guarantee or necessity for success as a head coach. That's where we get to this point where we're like, what is the difference between these guys?
Well, and then the difference, I mean, they will say, like, oh, Bieniemy has had some arrests in the past, right? He had some trouble with the law.
Oh, okay.
20 years ago.
Okay.
I still think
Todd Downing was just hired by the Jets, by the way.
Yeah, just had a DUI, as opposed to like some arrests, you know, in the 80s, 90s, and at the most, in 2001. Like, that was when he was a hothead player in the NFL. Those things kind of happen. Look, it's not an excuse for it, but at the same time, like, we have seen guys get many
second,
third,
chances, fourth, fifth chances,
right?
after having dust ups with the law.
Yes.
Todd Downing, who was on the Tennessee Titans staff, literally had a DUI 3 or 4 months ago.
Driving from the team facility.
And he was just hired by the Jets for their staff, like, literally a week ago. Like, that, if that's the barometer, there must be some really severe disparities in how certain ownership teams see a checkered past with law enforcement as being disqualifying or not. And also notably, of course, Todd Downing is a white man. Just by the way, just sprinkle that in there. Just not to put too fine a point on it. But the other thing that you were saying when it comes to the Commanders is, what troubles me about it is that I think you're right in the sense that if there's really no, like, foreseeable or tangible or really reported upon discord with Bieniemy and the Chiefs, I really think this was a move to make to basically be like, going into next year's potentially speculatively interviews for another head coaching position, Bieniemy being able to say, hey, I left my perch with Mahomes and Reid to revitalize a kind of stagnant, uninspiring offense on my own. I was the architect without those two big names beside me. But the point that we're, I think, both making is, like, that shouldn't be necessary.
Yeah.
That he should not need to have another notch in his belt, another strength for his audition, another resume credit besides.
So it's, like, completely undeniable.
Right.
I mean,
it's completely unimpeachable that he is an offensively successful coach.
Right. It's absurd. But we'll see. I mean, I'm bummed to have him in the division. I'll say that.